Hi, I'm Shorat Thapa of Borrowing Tape, and today I'm joined with Tomás Gómez Bustillo, who is the writer and director of Chronicles of a Wandering State, a supernatural comedy drama from Argentina. Welcome, Tomás.
Thank
And
you for having me.
yeah, so so obviously, your film has like a lot of magical realism in it. There are themes of death, religion, eccentric characters from small towns, and you yourself admitted to similarities with authors of magical realism like Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So I just wanted to ask you that, was this inspiration, like, was this magical realism intentional, or did it come as and when you wrote the screenplay, like, oh, it's just starting to feel more and more Marquez like? So was it always intentional, or how was that like?
That's a great question. I think it was there from the very beginning, because the first thing that I understood about the film was the tone, not necessarily the plot, and I knew that I really wanted the tone to be playful and weave elements of fantasy into like a very mundane space. So I think the inspiration from these literary heroes of mine was in its DNA from the very beginning.
So, how did you get the idea to write this story? And the lead character, Rita Lopez, was she inspired by a real life person?
The first inspiration that I had for this story, I was studying I was finishing my film degree at the American Film Institute, and I wanted to write a first feature. And the first thing that kind of popped into my mind was this image of a person who was just glowing light in the middle of the darkness, and that person felt at the same time beautiful and perfect, but lonely as well. And so that was the image that kind of got me thinking about the story, and I'm wondering who is this character? Why are they lit up? Why do they feel alone? And from that kind of became an exploration over a couple of years to find the story. And the character of Rita Lopez is not based on a specific person at all. It's based on a bunch of observations from people from that world, but also a lot of things about myself that I put into her as well. So she's kind of a mix of different people, kinds of people, and a lot of myself as well.
So, I mean, for a movie that has so much subtext on miracles and, both real and fake miracles, a director like you, what has your journey been with miracles? Have you ever believed in divine intervention in your younger years, or even now, for that matter?
I mean, personally, my own personal history, I was raised Catholic. So even though I'm no longer Catholic, that a lot of that kind of imagery and mythologies has still affected me in many ways into my adulthood. So there was definitely a long time during which I believed in miracles. This the way that miracles are defined specifically by the Catholic Church. But now, as an adult and as an agnostic, I think I'm even more open to the idea of miracles because it's not limited by a specific definition anymore. So anything could be a miracle at this point. Um, because as an agnostic, I try to think of like anything might have truth in it. I can't dismiss anything because I don't have that kind of certainty over the truth myself. So they're just kind of different kind of perceptions of miracles, I guess.
So I don't want to spoil the movie for someone else, but obviously after the first 30 minutes or something, something major happens. And what stood out for me was this, I believe, Dutch remix of Brian Adams' Heaven. Now, I mean, for me as a viewer, it would be very obvious that the director picked a song called Heaven because it's a movie about death and heaven and everything. But why precise, like why exactly did you choose this particular remix? Was it for like comedy purposes or like what was the reason behind
This song, first of all, it's a song that means it has like a particular presence in my past as well. This was like the EDM song that was like a banger in clubs when I was sneaking into clubs at like 14, 15 years old, you know? And so
it?
it was it was like the end of the night song, you know, at like 5, 6 a.m. when like the club in Buenos Aires is about to close and people are getting tired and they're starting to go home. It's like the end song that's sending you off, is sending you home. So it had like a feeling associated with it. But
Right.
I think it definitely has a lot to do with what you were mentioning about providing counterpoint to that scene so
Right.
that you could realize the absurdity of what she's going through by adding a little bit of that comedic touch of irony.
Right. So this was your first full-length feature project as a director. So what challenges would you face from, shifting to shorts and experimental films, student films to your own full-length film? As a first-time director, what are your challenges that you face?
I think it's just a different, it's almost a different format, you know, that the way that you package it, that you finance it, that you try to get it made. It's a almost like a different format, the way that you have to approach it. But I think one of the biggest challenges for me was in, I would say two. One is screenwriting, and really making sure that the experience of the audience has different layers. Because a short you can get away with having like one tone or one layer, one basic idea communicated. But I think the hardest thing in a feature is trying to get something that feels simple, but at the same time has many layers different different experiences throughout the film as well, kind of like a good roller coaster ride. You have ups and you have downs, you
Yeah.
have moments of suspense, of tension, and then release. And so that's something completely new that was really exciting to try. And then the other thing is just production. It's so much longer that you really have to have um stamina, I think, and perseverance. And most important thing is a good team, you know, because on a short film, you can have, I think, an okay team or somebody that you don't get along with. But on
Yeah.
on a feature, you need a team that everybody has each other's backs because if not, you're going to kill each other by week two. And that's really important to have a solid team to get something good.
Where was Chronicles filmed, and how long did the principal photography take you?
The movie was shot in this very small town in Argentina called Antonio Carboni. It's about
Correct.
2 hours away from Buenos Aires. And the shoot was 4 weeks.
4 weeks. Or
Yeah.
they've been a tight shoot.
Yeah.
And oh, so what particular films or directors influence you in general and this film as well?
Well, I guess I'll speak specific because there's so many directors that I love that I
Yeah.
could just start talking about this for hours and bore everybody to death. But also I'll speak specifically to the directors that I was inspired from for this particular movie.
Yeah.
I think the first ones that kind of come to mind are Jacques Tati, his like playfulness and physical comedy, and a lot of like his observational approach to film, almost like he's studying the human absurdity. Always found really beautiful, really beautiful. And then Apichatpong Urusakatu, I always feel like I might be pronouncing his name wrong, but the director who did Uncle Boon Me and Cemetery of Splendor and Tropical Malady, among some incredible work. And he also has a certain observational and absurdist approach to fantastical elements as well. I really think he's probably the closest that I'd ever seen to Latin American magical realism, even though he comes from a different culture. Um, so I admire him greatly. And then obviously Argentinian masters like Lucrecia Martel. I remember seeing Sama in theaters around the time that I was writing this and felt very inspired by her work as well. So those are some of the ones that come to mind right away.
What themes do interest you as a filmmaker? So, like, I mean, considering that you only have one full-length film at the moment and has stuff like magical realism and this absurdist comedy, but is that going to be a motif in your filmography, or like, is there any other theme that interests?
I think I'd rather leave that like open to myself, because if I
Oh,
right away was like, this is what I'm going to be for the rest of my career, then it might pigeonhole me and keep me from exploring things that I want to explore. So I think I loved doing absurdist comedy. I could see myself doing it again in the future. But I feel like there's other things that I would love to explore as well, and I'm excited to try different genres and different styles and see and explore really, because at the end of the day, film is a language and that's kind of the beauty of it. It's always expansive.
so I mean, obviously, it's like I personally enjoyed Chronicles of a Wandering Saint, but for some people, it might, some people who can't stomach weird things for instance, I talked to this particular person from a British magazine over here in London. I won't take the name, but his problem was he's like, oh, just play the end credits in the middle of the film. That feels so pretentious. So, have you received any interesting criticism to your film? Like, we know the praise is out there on the internet, but I want to know if you got some absurd criticisms to your film.
I mean, I think whenever you put anything out into the world, there's going to be people who like it, and there's going to be people who it's
Yeah,
just not their cup of tea,
yeah,
and that's totally fine, Like me and my friends debate about movies that I think are amazing, and they hate, and then the movies that they think are amazing, I hate, and I think that's just the fun of making a movie. I think
yeah.
the problem would be to make a movie that tries to make everybody happy, because then it might be kind of watered down and not really try to do anything interesting. So what I try to keep in mind is just make a movie that I would enjoy watching as a cinephile. That's who I was trying to make the movie for. It's just the cinephile in me and what I would like. And then, there's definitely people who have critiqued it and definitely people who don't like it, but that just comes with making anything and putting it out there.
One final question that I had was regarding the visual design of the angels in your film. So, I mean, what intrigued me right from the trailer was the the glowing, the glowing outline, and I like that kind of stuff visually. But I just wanted to ask, was that always how you visualized her transformation to be in a screenplay, or did you have another concept of showing angels in your film?
It was always in that tone,
Yeah.
maybe the execution might have changed a couple of times while I was writing, but I remember speaking of references, a really big reference for me was always Post Tenebras Lux, this movie by Carlos Regadas, the Mexican director, which is an incredible film, and it has a sequence where there's like a demon walking into a house at night, and the way that that was executed felt so grounded, and simultaneously so mysterious and beautiful and quiet that I was like, okay, this is gonna be the kind of approach that I would do to anything that's fantastical, because it just feels right to me for this kind of story. So I don't know that the exact execution of Angels was always like that during the whole development process, but the spirit of it was, to keep it mundane, to keep it small, to keep it very grounded so that it would stay in magical realism and not, expand to fantasy.